Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am NateFNGreat, and this is the Game Changer Podcast. I'm doing a bit of a different format than what I normally do. A lot of times, you know, that I like to do the music, and I like to do the amping stuff up and everything like that. For these interviews now, I'm actually going to go just straight barren, no music, no nothing. So if you guys are going to be bored within like an hour of just talking, well, I'm sorry, this is probably not the podcast for you, but this is something I think would be kind of interesting to kind of add to the content of the Game Changer Podcast. And I can't think of a better guest to have with me right now than somebody who is Wisconsin-born, Wisconsin-bred, definitely one of my favorites in Wisconsin right now. Local talent, Nick Colucci is here. Nick, it's great to have you on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, a lot of times what I like to ask, first off, is what got you interested in the world of professional wrestling? What kind of started you getting very interested and thinking to yourself, I'm kind of hooked on this? What kind of got you, what started that spark, I should say?
I don't remember. This is a fun thing that everybody I think discusses, right? I don't remember the first match I ever saw. I just know that I used to go to a little video store, right, in a like a grocery store kind of. It wasn't really. It wasn't just that.
Right? Gosh, that's when I was a kid. I remember those video stores.
And I remember seeing a cover of like Survivor Series, and there was whatever Demolition was on it. Or maybe it was a Royal Rumble. Those posters where it had all the guys, and seeing those characters and just being like, I don't know what this is, but I have to see it. And then I think my brother liked wrestling a little bit. Wasn't a huge fan. Still, he thinks it's ridiculous now, right? But. I think he agreed to like sit and watch it with me, and so that's kind of how I started getting into it. And it's funny because as I grew up, I'd say I was probably 5 or 6, and I was a huge fan. I had all the figures, and many of them anyway. And I didn't realize that my grandma, my mom's mom, she grew up down south. She was a big NWA fan and still loved wrestling. And I didn't know that she watched wrestling. So my grandparents, I spent a lot of time with my parents, worked several jobs to provide for us. So my brother and I spent a lot of time with our grandparents. And I would stay with my mom's parents, and we would watch wrestling. My uncle, he had the black box. So he would record all the pay-per-views for Grandma.
Oh my gosh.
And then we would watch them, and I would burn those tapes up, watching them over and over and over, and just studying each character and each guy. And she would tell me who each person was if she knew him or whatever. And so that was kind of the beginning of me falling in love with it. Now we're talking early 90s. So very character, a little bit of, WWF at least, very over-the-top characters where it's easy for kids to be drawn into that. But yeah.
It's really crazy because I think this is one of the first interviews I've had in quite a while where we've mentioned, black boxes, VHSs, VCRs, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
When we were younger folks, we actually had a machine that actually did the rewinding for us. It wasn't like nowadays where it was just like the DVD or the Blu-ray just picked up where you left off or something like that.
Yeah.
We had to literally work for that opportunity to find that spot in the movie or just to go back to the full beginning.
Well, I think the other thing that was fun about that time is discovering, going to a video store or even a rummage sale, or I did that a lot with my dad's parents. They were big rummage sailors. And you'd go through, and then you would be like going through the movies and stuff. Oh, they have a wrestling movie. I got to buy it. It's only 50 cents, or But discovering stuff, and that's how I discovered NWA and WCW and things like that, just finding tapes, and then, of course, tape trading was a big thing when I was first getting into the business or right before, that was, it used to be the fun of it, just like collecting baseball cards or anything else, is the trying to find, that gem of, I have to see this. I've never seen this show, but I heard so many things. I read the magazine, and they said this match was the best. I got it. That was always the fun, is trying to hunt this stuff down.
It is amazing. I mean, we've grown so much since then. Now we're dealing with, what does Meltzer say is the best match, or what does this person say is the best matchup. It's obviously just crazy seeing how that evolved from there. So, obviously, growing up, you have the spark of it. Mm-hmm. So what was kind of like the final nail of the coffin for you to pursue this and actually make this into something. Some people call it a hobby, some people call it a career. For you,
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this: do you consider wrestling as a hobby? Do you consider it as a career? But also, the main question is, what made you finally realize that you wanted to do this and you wanted to be a part of professional wrestling?
Well, we'll start with the career part
Right.
first. So, I don't look at it that way now. I wouldn't call it a hobby, though. This is definitely a job. It's a passion. It's a passion project, right? So I guess some people could say it's a hobby, but I take it very seriously. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of it later, but I've had a lot of opportunities that most guys haven't. So I wanted this to be my job, right? I wanted it to be my career. Unfortunately, you grow up, you have kids, you get older, you have bills. You have to have a good paying job in order to do this. And so I give lots of guys credit that are willing to venture further. I never wanted to leave my comfort zone of, I can't live in my car, right? I can't not pay a bill, right? And we'll talk about it. We'll go down the track. So anyway, getting in the business, I don't know. Obviously, in my era, we're probably close to the same age, right?
Roughly about.
So I did backyard wrestling, right? I think everybody did in our era.
I gotta give you a high five for that, because that was something we always did too.
Right, and so we were lucky enough in Oshkosh to have a Chicago company come up and run a few shows at an Eagles Club.
Okay.
And that was like seeing it live. I remember sitting there the first time. The neighbor guy, my parents' neighbor, had brought tickets over. He had a friend or something that gave him tickets. They were $12 or something, but he gave them to me. Hey, I know you're a big wrestling fan. So my dad dropped me off with one of my friends, and I remember the first bump a guy took, and you could feel it in your stomach. I don't get that now, obviously, but just like the ring, feeling that feel was like, whoa, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. I never went to a house show or any of that stuff. So being at a small indie with 130 people maybe in the crowd in this beautiful building, it was a whole different world. And then immediately, me and my buddy, we had a sleepover. We get home, and then we start playing with our wrestling figures and booking the territory, and doing the thing. And it's like, well, we could do this stuff. So we're, backyard wrestling, really, for whatever reason, just playing around. And then as we got older, we started to get a little better and all that stuff. And then at some point, I don't know, I got away from wrestling a little bit in high school. I still liked it. I didn't watch it as much. I didn't do the backyard thing as much, right? Here and there when I had nothing going on. I got a job really early on, too. My first job was like 15 years old. So.
Yeah, that can always deteriorate from that.
And I was really into music, and I played in bands and stuff.
Oh, nice.
And no, it wasn't good.
Well, were you like the vocals? Were you like the basses?
No, I played guitar and sang, which is funny because Seth Gambino was the drummer.
Oh, nice.
So, but yeah, so we played in bands and stuff. And we still liked wrestling, but music was our thing, and that was always same like finding the VHS tapes. We would go to the local record store and buy CDs, and that's what I put my money into. And then in high school, we were still backyarding at a place in Appleton, and the local promoter from Green Bay happened to hear that there's these kids drawing 100 people in the backyard somewhere, and he was drawing okay, but he was looking for young guys that would pay him to train at a school or at shows,
right?
And he wanted to find the next Ken Anderson or the next Silas Young and those guys hadn't. They were pretty big names in the Wisconsin scene at that point. Adino Bambino, I don't know if you,
gotcha.
Sam Heen, guys like that. Like they were big Wisconsin names for indie wrestling at that time, and he was looking for another guy that he could turn into that years down the road. He looked far enough ahead to realize those guys weren't going to get any younger. Not that they were old at that point, but he only had so much time to use them before he needed to find the next guy. So
he kind of had like this deal where it was like, he's seeing their stock rising.
Yeah.
But he didn't want to reach it to the peak where, where they're taking other bookings, and it's like, well, crap, now I got nobody.
I think that was part of it. I think, I could be wrong. I think the motivation really was, hey, if I can get a bunch of these kids that already can draw a crowd to sell tickets, to come watch them do this for real, and I can get them to pay somebody else to train, now 2 of us are getting money, right? And they're getting nothing out of it except for doing the same bullshit they're already doing, right? So it made sense monetary-wise for him, which, I mean, thank God, because I probably wouldn't have pursued wrestling if it wasn't for that opportunity.
No, definitely. So, obviously now you're getting closer to, like, the professional wrestling scene.
Mm-hmm.
Did you still continue to do more of, like, locally based stuff, or did you kind of branch out a bit more as time went on?
Once I got into the business?
Yes.
I would say the first year, I pretty much stayed in the Green Bay area, right? I worked for other promoters here or there. Not very often, though. It was kind of tough. And there's a couple people in Milwaukee that gave me some opportunities and stuff in the first year or two. I didn't really travel until about maybe 3-4 years in. And then it was like wide open, right? And I was going to Minnesota and mostly the Midwest, but I was going everywhere I could. Not because I was good and people were willing to pay me to not be good in a ring. It was because there was opportunity there. And I knew that the more I put in, the more I'd get out. So the more exposure I can get, the more places that somebody picks up a magazine and happens to see that I'm in results in 5 different states in a month. Hey, that guy must be something. Eventually, the money will come later, which wasn't important to me, still isn't. But at some point, I'll be able to create a name for myself and be undeniable,
Undeniable, undesirable,
yeah,
to completely desirable. Kind of like the Cody Rhodes deal that you're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
So you're getting that chance to expose yourself to other states and other promotions. Did you have a favorite place to go growing up, or were you still kind of like, the special place back in Green Bay? Because I know, like, a lot of times when they go to different states, obviously there is a different atmosphere. Some fans really like the character. Some people like the wrestling base. They like the story built up into it. Do you have a favorite place that kind of stood out to you?
I mean, I loved Green Bay because it was home. Brew City in Milwaukee was my second home. There were a couple places in Chicago I liked because the fans were involved. They were loud, but I didn't have a connection there. You get along with everybody in the locker room or whatever, but there was nothing that, like, made me want to, put my flag down or whatever and say, this is my home, But I would say that, obviously NWA Wisconsin, Brew City were the two main ones for me. Obviously I wrestled lots of cool places outside the state, but even now, it doesn't matter where I travel, unless I put some time in someplace, I'm always a little uncomfortable. Because I might meet people or I might know the whole locker room, or the promoter or whoever, but at some point, like, I don't have any skin in the game because I haven't put any time therein. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely get that. So, years gone by, you got all this experience, and then along comes a little thing called ACW. And I will say this, one of the coolest things I see from that was from the best 5 years DVD that you guys have. Definitely watch it. It's really good. I need to finish that before the 6th anniversary show comes up. But second match in there was you versus Joey Avalon.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember the location of this, but I just remember a couple things stood out to me was that it was definitely different from what I see from nowadays. You had the black trunks. You had just like the bare chest and everything. That you kind of looked like the generic guy, but you also were one of those guys that stood out as somebody that could hang with Joey Avalon. So is it kind of nerve-wracking working with people that you've never worked with before, or did you and Joey kind of have a little bit of exposure before that matchup in ACW?
So back to the backyard thing. That's how I knew Joey Evelyn.
Really?
When we had known each other for years. He trained years before we ever did. And he got a broken neck. And it's a very interesting story. A lot of personal stuff. I think ultimately at that time, and I came, a year or two after that, but at that time the locker room wasn't necessarily welcoming for him, and wasn't for me either, really. There was still that hangover of guys from, let's say, the territory days that never got the job, or just missed the territory days, and there was that weird 10-year span of the 90s, late 80s, 90s into the early 2000s, that a lot of these guys, there was only so many opportunities with WCW, ECW, WWE. You couldn't make a living on the indies, and there's no territories now, so you have to go to one of the big places. And so a lot of guys were real sour, and they didn't want you there. They didn't want you in their... They didn't want you in their locker rooms, because if you took a spot, you were taking their money, right? Mm-hmm. So that's how I met Avalon. He had disappeared. He didn't wrestle for a while, and then I'm not going to take credit for it, but I'd like to say I helped him come back a little bit. He did it on his own.
Oh, really?
But then I helped him a little bit with some bookings and some, so I did a tag team, Beer City Bruisers, right?
Oh,
in Milwaukee, and Matt and myself traveled all over the country doing that thing. And so we ended up actually doing a tag team match somewhere in the middle of our run there against Avalon and his tag partner. And they were good. So then Matt was a booker at Brew City, so we got them booked there. And then obviously Avalon has done his best to, he's really that good, right? But he's been able to break out of his own shell of being shy a little bit and taking the next step to be the big, the big star on the show or the next big guy. So the match you're referring to, there's a number of them that we wrestled in that first year or two. But yeah, we had wrestled tags before. And the funny thing is, some people know this. So we had done on there, I don't know, there's one that's for the title, and it's if I lose, I retire.
Okay.
That was a shoot. Not that we didn't. It's wrestling, right?
Right.
But so Matt and I had broken up as a team. We had a falling out, whatever. It's water under the bridge now, right? We're still very good friends. But I didn't want to do wrestling anymore because I had hit all these. I'd gotten these opportunities given to me, and for whatever reason, they didn't go anywhere. And then it was like, I had a hard time. You go to be an extra at WWE, and you might get a tryout match, or you might get a dark match, or you might get a TV match. Or you might sit in the back and eat catering and do nothing, right? But the whole goal, doesn't matter what anybody tells you, is to get a job there, right? Because that's what's going to pay the bills. And it was never for me, I'm going to be a millionaire. For me, it was, if I can get on that stage, I can give my kid, now I have two, but I can give my kid an upbringing that I never got, right? I'll be able to buy him everything he wants. I'll be able to help my parents out. I'll be able to... So, after all those opportunities and kind of dropping the ball myself,
right,
I realized that... what's going on? Good to see you.
Dude, long time no see.
How are you?
Doing great.
We just had a couple of people coming by. We had a couple of heroes, and anybody who listens to that will get that reference.
But anyway, so I, for whatever reason, I wasn't what people were looking for. I dropped the ball. I wasn't in good enough shape. Whatever the deal was, I just kind of I was fed up with it, and I was like, okay, I can't. I'm not going to make a living at this anymore, and I don't know how much more I can sacrifice. I don't think a lot of people understand that wrestling, and this is something I teach at our school, right? And I've had to tell several guys, wrestling really is a sacrifice, even on this level, because going to take bookings, right? And you're going to miss everything important to drive 400 miles from home for $40 in front of 10 people and miss birthdays and funerals and everything important, like literally everything important. So I was at the point where at that time period when I was doing the thing with Avalon, early years of ACW, I was at home packing my bag, doing something, getting ready to leave for the weekend. And I remember my wife, my now wife, right, was telling my kids something, and he was kind of talking back. And I had said, hey, you need to listen to your mom. And he turned to me and said, Dad, I don't have to listen to you because you're not here. You're never here. I don't have to listen to you. So I was like, whoa, wait, pump the brakes, right? And I'm on top of working 40 or 50 hours a week, being in the gym 2 or 3 hours a day, on the road 3 days a week. You realize what's important when that's the slap in the face I needed. Is like, oh, wait. You know, at that point he was probably 6 or 7, and it's like, I need to figure out what I'm really doing here, because I'm spinning my wheels, and I always would tell myself, one more year, one more good run, and then I get a little opportunity, a little taste, and then it would be the next year and the next year. So at that point, I told Dylan I was done. I said, hey, we're gonna get this company off the ground. I will come in and do whatever you want. I wasn't part of business or ownership or anything at that point, right? I was just a guy on the show.
Okay.
He was running it. I was helping him with some ideas and stuff, but he was doing all of it. And we built it all off of him anyway, right? It was just for fun. But I said, I'll help you get this thing off the ground. And then once it's off the ground and we got good crowds and we're doing good stuff and we got a good roster, I'm done. See ya, I'm out. So he told me I wasn't allowed to do that. He's like, nah, can't do it. I need another year. So when we built specifically that Ironman match, was half real that if I didn't win the title, I was going to retire, and I really had my heart set on being gone. Okay. And then Dylan had convinced me that it was okay if I only wrestled at home. I could quit wrestling everywhere else. I could just stay at home and do every other month or every 3 months, whatever we were running at that original schedule, and it wouldn't take time away from home, plus I'd be home. So I'd be able to wrestle and drive home right afterwards, 10 minutes away, still put my kids to bed at night. So I was okay with that, and I stuck around for a little bit.
Obviously that built up a little more as the years went by, but I want to kind of backtrack just a little bit, because you and Dylan, I want to get this right away. You have probably one of my favorite entrance theme songs of all time, and that's that remix of the You Got a Friend in Me.
Yeah.
And, obviously here in Wisconsin, a lot of people are familiar with, Tag Team Move as one of the most either entertaining or one of the best tag teams around here. So talk about your relationship a bit with Dylan. How did you guys, meet, and how did you guys become as good of friends as you are, nowadays, obviously?
We've been best friends for 20-some years. We say that. Obviously, we have many best friends, right?
Right.
I had never met Dylan until the 2nd grade when my parents had moved. And in his book, he talks about how he had these back surgeries and...
Yeah, battling with scoliosis.
Yep, and he had come back, and it was a big deal at school. And I was brand new because I had moved mid-school year to a brand new school. So all of a sudden, a few weeks in, they're having this parade in the hallway for some kid. I'm like, what? This school is cool. They have parades for people, right? And then, whether it was... Obviously, we connected on some level over wrestling. I don't even know how we first met. But it's funny because Dylan's stepsister, no, it would be half-sister, and brother are my cousins.
Oh, okay.
So, but I didn't know them really either, right? Okay. That's my dad's second cousins. Be my dad's cousin's kids.
We could do another podcast where we kind of connect the dots to this. But
yeah. But yeah, so however we connected, I'm sure it was over wrestling or something. But we just became, fast friends. And it was, I think one of the reasons that obviously wrestling is a big thing. It helps that we lived right down the street from each other. and grew up hanging out a lot, although he was grounded most of it. But yeah, I don't know. It's been a long time.
I mean, obviously, the relationship definitely built to the
Yeah.
point where you guys decide, hey, let's create, something out of this. And obviously, that's where a tag team move was kind of born. So was it you or was it Dylan that kind of created the name of tag team?
It was me off a bet.
Okay, really?
Yeah.
What was the bet?
I bet him that. So we had come up with this grand idea of, hey, we should tag, right? I'm not a main event guy anymore. I don't want to be a main event guy anymore. It's a lot of pressure. There's other guys that need to take that spot because I'm not taking, not that I'm not taking it seriously, but I don't need to be there anymore. Let's tag and have some fun and just mess around, right? Because he had just gotten released or whatever the deal was. And so I think the first time we tagged, we didn't have a name. And then I had bet him before we walked out, I said, I guarantee you, we can look at the crowd and just get them to chant tag team move if we say it to them. Like to do a double team move. And if we do, whatever. And so that was how it took off, was like, hey, let's just call our tag team that. It's so stupid. It makes sense,
And it is one of those things where it starts as a stupid bet, but then obviously it starts getting to market, and you're thinking, well, how can we make this better? And obviously we probably could cue in Toy Story logo-ish, the theme song, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Obviously one of the more entertaining teams of this.
I'm going to turn this around on you.
All right.
Dylan and I are both big. Well, Dylan's more a Disney guy than I am, but I have kids, right? So I watch Disney too, begrudgingly sometimes. It was maybe a year ago, and we had come out with the Toy Story T-shirt with our faces on the Buzz and Woody. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at it. Adam may have even been in this very building, and I was looking at the T-shirt, and I went, "You realize we missed the boat, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, why?" Monsters Inc. Like, I'm big and hairy. You're little and awkward looking. Like, we totally missed the boat on Monsters Inc. So,
that probably would have worked. I mean, they're probably going to come out with a sequel sooner or later.
Eventually, I would think they would.
And then that's when you guys can capitalize. Be like, okay, if it's just a one-time only T-shirt, we
right.
just bring in the Monsters Inc. deal.
Right.
That would just be absolutely insane. So, obviously, you got a couple years working with ACW.
Yeah. And
you start doing that transition from active wrestler to working behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about, what you kind of do behind the scenes before we even started. But just so that people kind of have a little insight to what goes on with that, kind of explain, what is it that you exactly do to contribute to ACW?
So I always say each of us, we call each other the Suits, right? The group of guys that runs everything.
Okay.
And I'm the wrestling guy, so I run the training school with Dylan, obviously, but I do the physical in-ring stuff. And then I also do a lot of the booking, and I help guys, agent, I guess is the best way to say it, matches, help guys come up with ideas for stuff, finishes, times, all sorts of things, right? Kind of the puppet master a little bit. Most guys have free reign, but there's certain things I need to build a story, let's say.
Yeah. But you're not trying to do a Vince McMahon deal where it's like, oh, this would be a great idea. Especially if they had something really dumb or something like that.
So we book not as a committee, but together. And so a lot of it is ideas that just keep getting bounced back and forth, and then we all have to agree on something. And a lot of times it'll start with something simple, and then my brain is mush, so it'll be like, oh yeah, that's great, and it's not. I'm just, and then somebody will throw a little something in, and then, okay, wait, now we got the ball moving a little bit. Now, but what if we did this? And then somebody else will pipe up, and then it continues to build. The side that I bring to it, as far as wrestling and booking, that helps is I've wrestled on the indies for 15 years and seen everything good and everything bad, and on some really big shows and some really little ones, where Dylan did WWE. So, and Weimer's the business guy, so he gives us a fan perspective more often than not. he's learned a lot about how wrestling works, right? But sometimes he'll throw something out there, an idea, and it'll be, that doesn't work. Here's why, but you're on the right track. We just have to, if we tweak this is how it works out, right? And then that's how a lot of things get built. But Dylan has this WWE mentality. Like, we run a show a month, and sometimes not even that often. We try to keep it to a show a month.
Right.
For me to keep, or not me, the company to keep everybody's interest, I can't bombard you with things to remember for the next show. That's too much, right? And all the little details mean something, but I don't have 8 hours of TV a week for you to remember those details. So a lot of times you have to build things smartly, and that's where I come in. It's like, all right, I've seen this done, or maybe I think this is the best way because visually this is going to work better, and this is going to get the point across more. And even breaking the fourth wall a little bit, but like earlier when I was talking with Steve, guys do this to me on shows that are not mine. They'll come up and they go, hey, I got to pitch something past you, and they'll run everything by me just to see what my feedback is. Whether they use my feedback or not is on them. I don't. But a lot of times it'll be, here's what I have in mind. Can you make it better? Can you shine it up just that much more? And a guy like a Steve, a guy like an Avalon, a guy like, Logan Lynch, they don't need that. They're that good, right? They're amazing. But when they come and ask me, it makes me feel good, number one. Number two, for whatever reason, whatever's in my brain has always been much better than what I can physically do, even when I was wrestling all the time.
It's crazy because you feel like you're giving back a lot more than just sitting and watching. Like, I've had people actually talk to me throughout the year about, how do you record the podcast? Where do you record your podcast? How, do you have like good content? Who would be good people to kind of interview with?
Right.
And it's always something that's really good to be able to say, hey, I helped this person get on the right track, to get on that right footing. So I can imagine for you, you having your years of experience, to have somebody, even if they've been working for so long, being like, hey, I have this idea. I want to run it past you to see if it works out for you.
I think it helps with me, too, because I don't look at wrestling like everybody. Everybody looks at wrestling as a bunch of moves and a finish, and then the crowd goes, yay, right? I look at wrestling more in the mentality of, yes, the moves matter, but what really matters is moments, reactions, taking people on that ride that you're supposed to, right? Where when they watch a match, it is exhausting sometimes if you are doing 20 or 30 minutes because they're on that roller coaster of up and down. But those moments are so important. We can go out there and go through the motions or not. We could go out there and have all sorts of great moves and make them look good and everything goes off perfectly. But none of it means anything if we don't build in time for people to react to it, and we don't build in those seconds here and there to get a crowd to respond to something.
No, definitely. I definitely do agree with that. And one big moment that I think you guys in ACW have definitely really created that creates so many great memories is Water City WrestleCon, or now it's WrestlingCon now because obviously legal reasons. Oh, trust me, we'll talk about a little more legal reasons in just a bit. But obviously the first one was about 3 years ago, and you did it at the it was the Sunnyview
Expo Center. Yeah.
I just remember that show being so great because that was where I got the chance to meet so many people. The first time I met Anderson, who honestly I thought he was going to be a real asshole, and he turned out to be one of the nicer people I've ever had because he literally was one of those people that I took 2 steps away. He ropes me back in to actually have a conversation.
Yeah.
I remember sitting at the table with Chris and AJ, and Kevin Thorne. He notices my crack because obviously my shirt wasn't tucked in enough, and he just stabs his stick down my butt. And it's just one of those things like, oh boy, I would have been shish kebab by Kevin Thorne if that was the case. So obviously, making a show like this is no easy feat, especially trying to get the right names and big talent to come in there. Obviously, you guys started off very strong with Bret the Hitman Hart. That was just absolutely
We created a fun problem for ourselves with the first one. So building shows like that is not easy. Like you said, it's not easy. And behind the scenes, there's so much that happens on shows like that people just have no clue. So that was a show where we had sold, 500 tickets for, and we knew we were going to lose our ass money-wise because Bret Hart was very expensive and the other names were fairly pricey, some of them anyway. And we had to rent chairs for the building, and Masonic Center donated chairs to us, and the guy we rented chairs from had said, I have 750 chairs. Like, all right, cool, if we can sell out every chair, if there's a couple empty ones, great. And we, we're business guys, so we figured out exactly the ticket number we had to sell to break even on everything without beer and food and sponsors and all that stuff. And the guy delivers the chairs, and I had to work that day, so we set up on a Friday. I get to the building and I realize there's only 300 chairs. We paid for 750. There are only 300. There's no way this is 700, whatever. So we called the guy and he said, sorry, I forgot I had rented the rest of them out to a wedding, so I gave you guys what I had. Well, do you have any more? No. So then we take the U-Haul all the way to Masonic. We steal a couple hundred chairs from them for the night. And then the venue said, well, you can rent chairs from us, but it's 75 cents a chair. Or you can rent bleachers from us, but it's it's a crazy amount, $150 an hour, because you have to pay a guy to stand there and make sure that nobody moves them, and then they have to move them, so there's another fee. Mm-hmm. We just didn't have it in the budget. So we did it right around 1,000 people on that show. A lot of people standing and weren't real excited about standing. The plus side is we gave them such a great show that by the time they were done, they weren't griping about having to stand for 3 hours. They were excited and wanted more. But the problem we built for ourselves is we start with Bret Hart, which is a crazy get, right? Nobody gets Bret Hart.
Right.
We were lucky enough with some, personal relationships and friends, and he knows this guy and whatever, that we got him. He gave us a really fair price for what he's willing to do. And we start with this guy that is, in many people's opinion, the best ever, right? Where do you go from there? We might as well never do another one, right? Number 2 is not whatever our main guy that we bring in. There's only a couple of those guys that ever in existence. And the ones that are left on the table are not affordable for most places, especially a small little company in Oshkosh. So we start that big. How do we follow it up? So when the guys and I talk about stuff, and we've had some, every show seems to have an issue, and you just work through it, right, like anything else. We've created this problem where we have to over-deliver. That's how I feel. We always have to over-deliver, because ultimately, if one person leaves a show disappointed, not because they're mad about a finish, they're disappointed because they didn't feel they got their money's worth. I didn't do what I was supposed to do as a promoter or an owner or a whatever, right? And that's important to me because I work really hard, right, in real life for a couple of bucks I make. So for me to sacrifice my money to take my kids to a show or something like that, if I leave disappointed, I'll never buy again. The goal is to get people to buy into what we're doing. We're not creating a cult. We're trying to facilitate a movement and make people realize that ACW itself is their company. We want ACW to be the home team. We want people to take pride in what we give them, and we want them to cheer us on just like they would the Green Bay Packers or the Brewers or anybody else locally.
No, I definitely do see that. And I definitely do have that feeling with ACW. It definitely does feel like they're always welcome. Like every single time I go to one of those shows, it seems like the first person that's always there is Josh. And he's always there to greet everybody and say, like, hey, thank you for coming. Yeah. I started, sponsoring you guys this past year, and every single time I've seen him, I usually get the handshake or, like, the big hug from him, which is always cool because it makes it feel like, that you guys are definitely trying to make it personal. Like, obviously, there's people that come in there, hey, you're still appreciating their business. There's some that go above and beyond to help you guys, do what you do. You definitely do reward that very well, and I can't, say so many more good things about that.
That's always the goal, I think. And if that's not the goal for people, like we try to set ourselves apart in every way possible, right? It's not an easy task. Everybody has a lot of the same wrestlers. Most of them are very, very good, right? So the wrestling content on many indie shows, at least in Wisconsin, is pretty equal, right? Then it comes down to production and overall feel. And then when you leave, did you feel like you spent your money on the winning team or not, right? So little things like you were saying with Josh greeting everybody or saying goodbye to everybody, and Dylan does it, and once in a while I'll go do it. If we can create that personal attachment with people and make them realize we really do appreciate this. This isn't, we're not running shows and then taking all the money and, going to the bar and buying beer all night, which sometimes we do, right? If we got a little extra, but we're just taking it and turning it over and reinvesting in the next to keep delivering, because we want to keep putting smiles on faces, right? So sometimes when you do, especially a WrestleCon, or like the stuff we're going through now, the legal things that we were going through, I don't know.
Oh, trust me, I'm getting to that. I'm kind of building up the suspense.
All right. I'll let you ask the next one, then we'll get there.
But I think I was going to ask, obviously with wrestling, there are always little brighter things. Obviously, Wrestling Con has always been one of my favorite things to go to, because it does feel like a big convention for wrestling. I especially got the chance to do that in New York this past year, getting to meet all those people. Same thing with ACW. You guys do such a great job of bringing in great guests.
Yeah.
There's obviously certain less downs when it comes to. I know last year you promoted Sunny to be a part of that, and unfortunately she could not make it. So you were lucky enough to get, I believe, Jeff Jarrett for that one. Was that correct? Or was he
it was 2 years ago. Yeah. So it seems like every year. That one, I think we had 2 or 3 cancellations by the time we put out the actual. We had 1 or 2 cancellations before we put out the poster, and then we had 1 or 2 while the poster was out and had to replace. It happens. It's life. If you didn't have those kind of problems, and that's where the over-delivering thing comes in.
Right.
Last year anniversary, we were supposed to have Spirit Squad, right? Yay.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And good on them, but I don't know what one of the 2 but he decided to put himself through rehab, which is a very commendable thing, and I can't be mad, and I would never want anybody to be mad at him for that.
No.
So of course they couldn't make it. So then we're sitting there going, oh man, we got to replace them on the show. What do we do, right? The one group, because on anniversary we usually try to piggyback guys with House of Hardcore with Tommy Dreamer. So we're kind of held to whatever he's willing to work with as well. So if we went way outside the box, he probably isn't going to use that guy the next day, and then it helps us on cost because he'll split stuff. So he was trying to pitch LAX, not Homicide and Hernandez LAX, the younger guys.
Ortiz and Santana.
Yes. And I didn't have a problem with that, but I didn't think that was a suitable, even playing field with Spirit Squad. They would give us probably a better match, maybe. Right, but I don't think the name value is the same, at least at that point. But probably is now.
Right.
If not more. So we run into this unique problem, and my thing is always over-deliver. So I'm willing to eat the cost on bringing X-Pac in and getting that big, oh my god, it's X-Pac, and you get that fun moment where he opens the show and greets everybody. That is a cool thing, and it's a cool feeling, and I'm willing to lose money on that deal to deliver something more than I had promised to make a replacement, because everybody realizes we anteed up. So we made good on our end, promoting wise.
Yeah.
And that's important to me, If we ever went down, I would feel bad.
Right. So, all right. I think definitely it's now time to kind of ask about this. So obviously,
I don't know how much I can say, by the way.
Well, as much as you can say without getting in too much trouble with the other 3.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the big places that you did have was the Menominee Nation Arena.
Yeah.
You did it for last year's Wrestling Con. You did it for this year. You also did it for the August show.
Yep.
The one where you had the 2 bands and Booker T involved as well,
mm-hmm.
which that was great. Also, it's one of those few times where it's like, we're seeing TW3 getting beat by a legend. What's going on? And I made the joke. I said, okay, so we've seen you beaten up by Booker T at the August show. We see you get the $1 Million Dream and Dream Sweep from Ted DiBiase. Even that classic line of like, "You're not worth $100." I'm sorry, that was just priceless for me. That was amazing. And I said, well, now the only thing we need is for him to get gored by Rhino, and we call that an eventful year for him. But so obviously, seemed like everything was going good. I didn't hear too much in the way of problems, but obviously the news broke out that they were filing and declaring for bankruptcy.
Yep.
But also, another news report went out that they had not paid certain promotions as well as companies their amount of money that they were owed. And unfortunately, ACW fell under that category. So, for first time I'll be explicit and vulgar. What the fuck happened with that? And is there like any kind of settlement between the two of you right now, or is that still kind of an ongoing battle right now?
There's an ongoing lawsuit, so I can't say a ton. I can speculate a little bit.
Right.
And so I love doing business with them. When we did Rock and Rumble, it was very visible to me that something was wrong, and we knew something was wrong because we were owed ticket money from April. And so going into Rock and Rumble, that was a co-promoted, not really, it was their promotion. We were there and ended up being co-promoted, and we ended up taking the reins and kind of running the whole thing because nobody would communicate day of. Right? There was supposed to be an opening band. No opening band was there. I didn't know that until 20 minutes after doors were open, and then it was like, hey, where's the opening band? Oh, there isn't one. Oh, shit. Now what do we do? Right? Well, I guess we're just going to dazzle the people with our great wrestling ability, and that everybody's going to have to be happy, and hopefully the bands are awesome, and they were. The only way I can figure this, because I feel like they got themselves into a mess. It's pure speculation, by the way. But I feel like they got themselves into a mess because they were over budget day one when they built the place, and they rushed it, and from my understanding. And then when the herd is not there, and I'm not sure what kind of financial dealings they have and all that, but when the herd isn't there and they have nothing happening for months on end, they still have overhead. It would be like owning a house and having the lights and the heat on all winter, but only being there one day a month. Well, you probably best not to own the house because that's cost. Mm-hmm. And so when they're not having events, they're not bringing in money, can't pay bills.
Those bills can stack up quite a bit.
They stack up really big when you're already over budget. And I know that from what I've read, they had several investors back out at the last minute before everything was done. So what they were promised from investors never happened. So they were already, the couple of people in the main ownership group were pulling what they had out of their pockets and trying to make a go of it. And, and they've tried to remedy it a couple of times, but whether it be bad promotion or not enough promotion or, a failed this or all around just not, to me, a lot of maybe not great choices were made. Mm-hmm. And then it's a robbing Peter to pay Paul, to pay Bill, to pay John. You know what I mean? It just keeps getting kicked down the road until at some point it snowballs up. And, it's unfortunately large companies that are owed large amounts of money, the people that build it, whatever, are owed way more money than, we are. We're like 20-something on the list, which sucks. And I feel bad because the people there are great, and they were awesome to deal with, and I want them to succeed, and it's not out of the question to ever go back. But at this point, financially, I can't, because I can't run shows and then not have any income from them, especially big shows like a WrestleCon. That our budget on a show like that is $20,000. That's a lot of money.
It really is.
And when you're not getting any money back from it, and you just spent $20,000, and you run a little wrestling show, and our normal shows at Masonic, only 300 people. They feel full and they're awesome shows, but 300 people worth of ticket sales once a month don't build $20,000 fast enough. to do the next one. You know what I mean? So,
No, I definitely do agree
and
with
then
that.
we, obviously we have a school. That's an expense we have.
Right.
We have it kind of figured out, for rent and stuff. But wintertime, it costs a little more to heat it, right? So,
especially with our winters, it is
Yeah,
kind of bad. And people have been saying it's probably going to be worse this year than it was last year.
That's what I'm hearing.
I hope not.
I think we're going to get more snow for sure, which is going to be worse. But
yeah, that will definitely put a little. But I do want to ask this because
Yeah.
obviously one of the reoccurring people that definitely keeps coming back is indeed Tommy Dreamer.
Yeah.
So I got to ask that, how did you guys, reach the kind of deal that you did with Dreamer? Do you guys just have a good relationship with him, or is it
Yes.
just a situation where, like, luck would have it?
No,
He likes Wisconsin.
I don't think he likes Wisconsin at all. No, I'm sure he loves it. Tommy is a workhorse. Him and Dylan are very good friends. Dylan calls him Dad, right? And Tommy really was kind of Dylan's road dad at WWE for a number of years. We play this little game. I'm sorry, Tommy, that I'm telling people this. We play this little game when we go on the road. Dylan and I travel together often. And we will call Tommy, and I pick his brain about old school ECW stuff.
Okay.
And I have a list of questions in my phone. And every time we're in the car, we will call him and ask. At least one question that I need off the list, right? It's a lot of fun. And usually he'll give us like a 2-minute, this is whatever, right? And then 20 minutes later he'll call back and give us 2-hour-long story about whatever we asked, because now he's thinking, and it works out because he's usually driving someplace while we are, so it works. But yeah, we just, him and Dylan have had a good relationship, and then that's branched over to myself and Josh and Gust. He's family to us, and he's done all sorts of great things for wrestling in general for lots of people. And he's a real cheerleader is not the right word, but he wants guys like us to succeed, and not just us specifically because we know him. He wants everybody in wrestling to do good, and he's willing to lend a helping hand. And so, thankfully, we get to use that to our advantage. And he's just our reoccurring, when anniversary comes up, every year, pretty much, you're going to get Tommy Dreamer and somebody, right? That's kind of a given. It ends up being difficult, because then it's okay, what does Tommy do? Well, Tommy can do whatever he wants, in my opinion.
It's Tommy Dreamer. He can
Yeah.
do whatever he wants.
Yep.
He's earned that right for so many years. I've reached that point too. One thing I'm looking forward to with Tommy Dreamer is that I'm hoping that we can actually set this up. And if he's going to do like meet and greets, like doing the intermission, I would love that, because I have a friend who is just the biggest Tommy Dreamer fan. I just want that reaction of just him getting a picture with Tommy Dreamer. Even I would pay even double money just to get that reaction of him next to Tommy Dreamer, because of the big mark that he is.
He will definitely do meet and greets.
Oh my gosh, yes. So Tommy Dreamer, if you ever listen to this, my friend is Griff. We need to meet him. And I think I mentioned this to him at StarCast. I remember saying to him that he and I, would usually do the backyard wrestling deal, and he would do, emulate the moves that he did.
Yeah.
And Tommy just looked at me and he just said, "I'm sorry."
Yeah.
Just this one of those things like, are you sorry that he couldn't have picked a better person? Are you sorry that you had to go through the pains that you delivered on people? I don't understand. No, I'm kidding.
Tommy is he's a great dude. He really is.
Oh my gosh.
He's a little weird sometimes, right?
Well, I've heard stories.
That's a given. Anybody in the wrestling business that's not a little weird is weird in itself, right? But he's the best. I love him.
So I definitely did want to talk about this because it is probably one of your best years in ACW, which was for the last couple of months.
Yeah.
You had one of the biggest wins, I think, in your career, honestly, winning the their ACW Rumble match.
Yep.
And you were number 3 or 4?
3.
Number 3.
Yep.
So you basically pulled a Ric Flair.
Yeah, I was the Iron Man for the night. It was a long day.
It was still great. So obviously, that earned you the opportunity to face Logan Lynch at Night of the Legends for the ACW heavyweight title. One of the things I definitely did love was the fact that, you got to celebrate in the ring. Your kids came in, getting the chance to, just seeing, Daddy win a huge one. Then we fast forward to Night of the Legends, and, you've talked about how, you kind of wanted to back away from the main event scene. You kind of wanted to be more, I guess, the teacher than be a part of the All-Star Club.
Yeah.
And honestly, the performance you gave against Logan Lynch was just absolutely fantastic. So I wanted to let you know, personally, that was just great. I didn't like the ending as much, but I will say this. It's one of those things where I'm looking forward to Tanner's to see how this all turned out. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, that kind of storytelling you were telling me about that, gets you hooked on to be like, okay, what can I look forward to in the next show? Obviously, we have that deal where we find out why the situation went down, why it went down the way it did. And him with his fake belt. Although, so one of the things that I remember doing was, I think I remember we wanted to do the interview before Night of the Legends, but one thing I definitely remember from, I think it was either Dylan or Josh saying, was that, there came a point where you were just in a state of mind where you did not want to be disturbed by anybody, but you wanted to be just completely focused on the match itself. So obviously that's a really strong state of mind if you want to be in that point where you have a do not disturb sign on your face just to do that. But I got to ask you, dude, how was it, to be in that kind of main event level feel again, to win that big Rumble match and then compete against a very talented guy? You'll not hear it in the show, but you'll hear it on here. A very talented guy, a very gifted guy like Logan Lynch in the main event of obviously a big night at Night of the Legends.
There is a lot of pressure, So I joke with our students at our school. I always say the bump card that everybody hears about is a real thing, and it really is, right? I've got like 3 left, and so I would say, and I'm not willing to use them on something that's not up to my standards. I've always been a guy that I'm afraid that at some point I won't know. I never want to be a guy that's in a spot and can't compete at a certain level. Hence the reason why I decided to go back to tagging, and Dylan and I tagged, right? Because I don't feel like I'm a main event guy. I don't need to be there, but I'm also, and I'm not that I'm not willing to put in the work to stay there, but there are other guys that deserve those opportunities, Logan Lynch being a number one in my book. But there's a lot of pressure on my end to be able to live up to that standard, because again, he's really that good. And when you build that whole story that way, the way that we did, and you then have to deliver, and if you deliver a subpar match where the fans don't get what they expected on that stage without a follow-up figured in or something, I don't know that I'd be happy with that. So it was a lot of like, nope, I'm in this zone because I'm thinking about, I have to be the guy from 5 years ago, the main event guy that could walk into any company anywhere in the country or the world at that point, walk in, and by the time I left, you knew who I was and what I was about, right? And that was always the goal. And so now to be that guy, the promos are not untrue, right? That Logan Lynch says, you're 5 years past your prime and 30 pounds overweight. Well, that's obvious if you look at the ACW 5 years DVD, right? I'm okay with that. I can live with that on my end. The problem is, can I compete at that level? And I feel like I can, but I can't do it at any sort of long term. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a special night for me. I don't know that everybody understood how important that day was for me. Just to prove it to myself that I still got it, right? A little bit. Being able to do that in front of my kids is very important, because my youngest, when I was ready to retire, I didn't have my youngest son yet. And then when he was born, I was like, by the time I'm done, he will never remember. He won't even know that I did this. And he'll only have some crappy DVDs I have stored someplace, when I wasn't even halfway decent, right? So it was kind of cool for him. He's 3, so he might not remember it, but it was cool for him to be able to see his reactions, and feel that and get the feedback from my wife and my dad who were sitting with him he was so excited for this or this, And it was cool for me on a personal level to be able to work with a guy like Logan Lynch, who I've been saying it for 2 years. I don't think it's any secret that he's probably, if not the best, he's probably in the top 2 or 3 guys in the state as far as performers. He easily looks the best, right? He's a good-looking guy. And I personally feel, and have for the last couple of years, that he won't be here long. He's going to get an opportunity somewhere. He's going to get a job with a big company somewhere, and we only have so much time with him. So I wanted to be able to say, all right, I might be the old guy in the locker room. Let's see if the old guy can hang out with the young buck and teach him something,
It is kind of crazy because tracking back to what you were saying about, Wrestling Con, that, it seems like you're always trying to, just overbuild and put it to, the next one. I think that you guys have definitely built Logan Lynch kind of in that same way.
Oh, yeah.
To where, obviously last year he's the guy who ended the career of Sadist. He's the one who put Sadist on the shelf, and I just remember that promo that Sadist had where he said, if you don't strive to be better, be a better champion than the one you won the title from, you don't deserve to hold that belt to begin with.
Right.
And I think that Logan Lynch has definitely stepped up his game now, because he now is supposed to be that guy who, he ended this guy's career.
Yeah.
What's up for him next? And it's just been the sky is indeed the limit for him. Like you said. I mean, he had that great matchup with John Morrison. No, I'm sorry, Johnny Impact. There we go.
I don't know if you call him that anymore, though.
Oh, that's true.
Right?
That is true. He might be back to John Morrison this time, but it's a weird situation.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I think that in other companies he probably is still a big name out there. But I think with ACW, it feels like you definitely are giving him more layers to kind of build up on. I think I don't know who told me this conversation, but I think I remember somebody mentioning that when he first started, that there actually came a point that during his training there was almost a point where it was like he's not getting it, but then something clicked.
I don't know if I ever heard that. I know that the first time, maybe his first year or so, I've been in locker rooms with him, and obviously he's a well put together guy, so you could see that, and he understood what he was doing. I'd wrestled him in 6-man or something. You could tell he got it. He understood what he was doing. Mm-hmm. He needed a little guidance to get it all put together and build something off it. And when we brought him to ACW, we actually, fun fact, Willie Wild, of Wild and Randy, and Logan Lynch, we almost put as a brother tag team.
Really?
Because they looked at that time similar, because they both had longer hair, they both had decent builds, they're not quite the same size, but visually you could almost, like Major's brothers, right?
Oh yeah, right.
Visually you could almost pass them off as brothers. And so we were like, that could be a fun thing. We've never done that before. You don't see a lot of brother tag teams. And I always like tag teams. Tag team wrestling is probably my favorite. I think there's so many options and directions you can go with it and make it exciting. But it's also a good tool for younger guys to learn their craft, because they have somebody to lean on if they don't quite, if they hit a speed bump in a match or something.
Right.
They got somebody to lean on to get them out of the hole.
Yeah. All right, so we're just about out of time, and I think that they're starting to really warm things up. They're getting ready to go.
Yep.
I got random people. So final question to kind of end it here. So when you look back on your career and you've looked at your accomplishments, and you kind of are, sitting there maybe in a rocking chair with your kid, with each kid on each knee. Who knows at this point? I'm going back to classic movie kind of style.
Yeah.
And what is something that you would want people to take away from your career as a wrestler? What is something that you would want them to hopefully, gain from your from the history that you've put in, obviously, into the business here in this state?
I think from day one, I was always told, leave the business better than you found it, just like anything else, right? And so I hope, and I try to do this in every locker room I'm in, if somebody's willing to listen to me rant and rave about my thoughts and psychology on wrestling, hopefully they take something from it and can apply it and use it, and then it helps them in some way. That's really it, you know. Obviously, I'm trying to make a mark by building a great company and giving back to people that are willing to come and support us, right? I'm willing to bump until I can't anymore to keep entertaining people. It's lost on some people sometimes that when you come to wrestling, it's just, oh, you're seeing wrestling. I look at it far more in depth sometimes. You know, somebody might have a bad week. And if I'm a bad guy on a show, I hope you scream your head off at me and you forget about your bad week. And now you're taking something out, and I'm hoping I can provide that service for you. Or I can let you forget about whatever you have outside of the doors and then just enjoy a couple of hours, right? I'm hoping I can be that guy for some people.
You know, it was really hard for me to do that. I think it was the Merrill show earlier this year because you had just won the Royal Rumble deal, and you go from that to being a bad guy. And it's kind of like, I can't boo this guy because he just put on a huge performance. How do I do that? But I guess boo?
Yeah.
Just with a giant question mark.
Yeah, but I you know, back to my point, wrestling is far more than just a live show. It's an experience, and it's an outlet for some people. And you know, if I can be some sort of conduit there while I'm still performing, that means the world to me to be able to be that guy. And ultimately, if I can help, you know, pave the way or lend some knowledge to somebody and they use it and you know, again, leave it better than you found it. If somebody else does the same and we keep going, wrestling will be healthy and alive, and, you know, this beautiful thing, great locker rooms and awesome wrestling and good people. You know, it's important to be a good person, in my opinion, and that's, you know.
It's better to be a dreamer than a Bradshaw, probably.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way of putting it.
Bradshaw's pretty awesome, but yeah.
I don't know if you've heard the stories I've heard.
Yeah, I agree.
But, all right, so, Colucci, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
you so much for doing this. Guys, if you haven't gotten a chance, definitely check him out along with everybody else with ACW. He will be performing in Tanner's next Sunday, and it's a headline with Logan Lynch defending the title against TW3 and Porn Stash. That's going to be an awesome matchup. Also, be sure to come to the ACW Anniversary Show, which will be in December. I mean, you've already got Tommy Dreamer and Rhino on there. I can only imagine what else surprises that you guys are going to have for that.
It's going to be fun.
But for right now, we're going to get ready for Frontline Pro. He's got to get ready to compete. I just got to get ready to sit in my seat and either cheer or boo this guy. Who knows? We'll see what Swoggle has up his sleeve other than an RKO, which is honestly one of my favorite things. So, guys, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you in the next episode. Bye-bye.